नमस्कार दोस्तों। भारत का इतिहास में अखंड भारत या अखंड हिंदुस्तान अवधारणा क्या है? ये मेरा प्रश्न है। ये अवधारणा अखंड भारत क्या है? What is this historical concept? In the history of India, the concept of Akhand Bharat. It is a concept that may have many different meanings, and we're just going to give our own interpretation. There could be very different meanings. One component may be conceived as a broader cultural sphere. For example, India is a spiritual center. One might even personally feel that India is a spiritual homeland, a spiritual motherland or fatherland of so many sacred traditions. And in the history of India, we can find the origins of not just Sanatana Dharma, this but also the Buddhist Dharma. So Sanatana Dharma and Buddhist Dharma, basically, there's an emergence of the sacred traditions where Buddhism arose from India, and there were famous, great noble kings who adopted Buddhism, including the Emperor Ashoka. But essentially, Buddhism traversed by knowledgeable monks from India. It traveled from India all the way eventually into China, to Japan, to Southeast Asia, many different modern nations within a broader cultural historical nexus. So this concept of Akhand Bharat might even refer to a cultural sphere of shared um, knowledge and traditions, but it can also refer to, in a political modern sense, for example, we uh, we haven't talked in depth about this terrible historical outcome, which is known as the partition of the British Raj. Basically, for a period of time, basically there was this, essentially a colonial occupation of India, and the tragic circumstance is that rather than the initially conceived idea of a united Akhand Bharat, united India or undivided India, after partition, basically there was this scheme of partition meant a separate Republic of India and a separate Pakistan, and eventually what became of Pakistan, there was essentially um, within Pakistan, there was like a west and eastern sphere, and one part became um, a sovereign country onto itself, right? So we may be wrong in this, but apparently, um, what was essentially once a part of Pakistan, which both Pakistan and the Republic of India was part of this um, larger Raj, but essentially the apparently the eastern part where East Pakistan became Bangladesh, a country, independent country, and within the international system. Personal reflections. If we conceive of Akhand Bharat as a wider dharmic shared cultural sphere, for example, now, this can be kind of vague because now, if, for example, there are temples across beautiful parts of the world, from Nepal, uh, basically, there is a shared cultural nexus from different temples, the mandirs, and the and different, basically both Hindu temples and Buddhist temples, and you see some, basic um, motifs or different themes that overlap between both Hinduism and Buddhism, or Sanatana Dharma, or the Buddhist Dharma, which has, in our opinion, there are many shared connections. On a historical note, This concept, in our opinion, was represented by great leaders of history, including Netaji Subhas Chandra Bose, who would have admired this idea of undivided, completely united India, AKHAND, BHARAT. Um, but basically, with respect to modern history, there are developments in history, and in our opinion, if people feel basically this sense of a dharmic cultural sphere, we think that's a highly positive thing. So to clarify on a political note, this concept of a united India, in our personal opinion, basically, you never know what happens in the future because, imagine if, for example, the people of modern India, the people of modern Pakistan, if eventually there's a voluntary dual desire to become part of one union. If both parties chose to become part of one union or under the concept of a Akhand Bharat, that would you know that would be up to the peoples. So we discussed some of the cultural and political elements of the concept of Akhand Bharat from our own personal opinion. Um, and we wanted to pivot to more of a spiritual perspective, um, basically as a continuation of the cultural discussion. India, this ancient civilization, is the birthplace of many sacred traditions, not only Sanatana Dharma. We are adherents of Sanatana Dharma, or we conceive and identify as Sanatana Dharma ke Bhakt adherents. But there are other sacred traditions all around um, the wider sphere, cultural sphere of Asia, Northeast Asia, East Asia, Southeast Asia, enlightened masters, enlightened gurus, enlightened beings such as the Buddha arose in the sacred land of India. Um, and so we pivot to another concept of spirituality, and there is this sacred living goddess, the waters of the goddess, and it's not the water that we have in the slide here from one of our journeys. It's not the slide that we have here, in the image, but in India there is living being Ma Ganga Devi, which which can be translated as Mother Ganges Goddess, Ma Ganga Devi. Living person, living divinity. And how can we describe this in basically an understandable manner? A living goddess is more than just the elements of water, basically the force of water, the flow of water, temperature, elements. It's, for example, let's make sense to a naturalist, to people who are skeptical, naturalistic, even atheistic. A person. So you may have hair, flesh, bones, skin, but you are more than just the hair. So one with faith may perceive, one has to understand that the living water is a living person, living being,